Hello, hello. Hi, I'm Dr. Patricia Mills, and I'm here joining you live in Facebook to present on a topic that I hold very dear in my heart, and that is the fact that humans, and this time I'm going to be focusing especially on women, us women, can reverse our hormonal imbalances. Okay, so if you're joining me live, please put in your name and where you're calling in from. And please feel free to ask questions in the comments. I can see your comments. It looks like it's working. And one of the benefits of joining me live is you get to ask your questions. Okay? So, welcome. I'm Dr. Patricia Mills. I am a medical doctor. I specialized in physical medicine rehabilitation. Then I developed my own hormonal imbalances. So there I was, a doctor working in the Western medicine paradigm, and my hormones were going completely out of whack. I was a hot hormonal mess, you could say. And nothing in my medical training in medical school or residency had really equipped me to really understand what was going on and to improve the situation. Like most women who are suffering from hormonal imbalances these days, I went to my family doctor and we ran some blood work, and the blood work was, normal. It was within normal range. And I just was like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't feel good. I'm having a really hard time maintaining my ideal weight. I had a massive fibroid on my uterus. I was having a really hard time getting pregnant. And this was all in the setting of me, as a medical doctor. I was applying the knowledge that I had about nutrition, which is not very much. In medical school, we get like maybe 4 hours of nutrition, and it's very basic. Like now that I've gone deep into nutrition, so as a functional medicine practitioner, and as very passionate about nutrition, I realize now that those 4 hours spent on nutrition in medical school were like not even the tip of the iceberg. It's like the sliver of ice from the iceberg that sank the Titanic, like just such a small amount of information. And also about hormones. When we are taught about hormones, unless you go into like very, very deep hormonal studies in addition to hormone therapy, into what the hormones that doctors are taught about. We're taught about like, this is this hormone, this is that hormone, but we're not taught about so much the relationship between all the hormones, right? And how is it that when one hormone becomes unbalanced, that all of these other hormones can become unbalanced as well? So we weren't taught that. So here I was working on a spinal cord injury ward as a specialist in physical medicine rehabilitation, eating what I thought was a healthy diet, exercising every day as we're told to do to maintain our health. And my hormonal imbalance was just completely like out of whack. Okay. And you don't know what you don't know, right? So at the time, I didn't know that a lot of what I was experiencing was due to hormonal imbalance. Okay. And I also didn't know that there were things that I could do to reverse my hormone imbalance that didn't involve medication. So what I did was what most women do is I went to my family doctor, and as I mentioned, we did the blood work. It kind of came back normal. And she did what any like very well-intentioned family doctor will do, where she was like, okay, well, do you want to try like a hormone therapy prescription, like something to help you feel better, something like that. And I was like, that just something about that just didn't feel right to me, even though I had been taught the same thing. It's like, well, here's this hormonal imbalance issue. Maybe we'll try like an oral contraceptive to help your skin look better or to regulate your periods. Like my periods were very heavy, very painful. And so the recommendation was, why don't we try like hormone, like an oral contraceptive or an intrauterine device to heal your hormone, right? And I was like, okay, something, not to heal your hormone, but to make you feel better, right? And I was like, okay, something about that just doesn't feel right. So I stepped back And I was diving into the research because I'm also a researcher. I'm a published researcher. I've published studies, not in hormones, but I'm very familiar with reading research, understanding that there's like a very specific research language. I'm good at understanding that. And because of like my deep knowledge of the human body with physical medicine, I was putting a lot of things together, right? Like a lot of pieces of the puzzle. And I started to realize that a lot of what I was experiencing was due to hormonal imbalancing, which wasn't detected on blood work, because blood work is like a one-time snapshot of your body, right? It's like you do the blood test or you do the saliva or the urine, and it's like, boom, one-time picture of the body. But it doesn't tell you what's happening day to day, overnight, after a meal, you know, all those kinds of, with stress, that kind of stuff, right? So the body language is the key. Your body is telling you like things are not well. And how do you know? Well, you have issues with your menstruation. You have issues with perimenopause. You have issues with your menopausal symptoms. You have issues with your fertility. You have endometriosis. You have fibrosis. You have polycystic ovarian syndrome. You have low energy. You have a hard time maintaining your ideal weight. Your hair is thinning and falling out. All of those things are signs that your hormone balance is not good. Other things might be mood, like you're low mood, you're irritable, you're kind of angry, and you're like, I don't want to be an angry person, but here I am being angry, right? All of these things are signs of hormonal imbalance. And why is that? Why does that happen? Well, what you have to understand is that hormones, I like to use this kind of metaphor. It's like, you know, when you have children playing and they're kind of holding hands, running around a circle, like ring around the rosy. What happens is our hormones are doing that. They're kind of like running around the body and they're sort of holding hands, so to speak, in that sense that if one falls down, the others fall down. And what I mean by fall down is they become imbalanced. So for example, your hormone insulin, which is regulated by how much sugar goes into your body, not just how much, but how quickly, how fast, you know, that hormone insulin, if it becomes imbalanced because you're eating food that is overly spiking your blood sugars, it will affect your other hormones, including your hormone cortisol, which is your stress hormone, because it's very stressful for the body to experience these huge ups and downs in your blood sugar, okay? So then your cortisol hormone is being activated, and when you overactivate your cortisol hormone due to physical stress, which is the blood sugar part, or emotional stress, which is like stress, which is, you know, today's current events are very stressful for people, understandably so. That can unregulate your cortisol hormone. And when you dysregulate your cortisol hormone, there's this domino effect where progesterone tanks, which is your feel-good chill hormone. So now you got less of that on board. And when you have more cortisol, it drains your progesterone and eventually your estrogen and your testosterone, okay? And there's also a link between estrogen and insulin. So you see there's like this very complicated kind of dance between all of these hormones. And oftentimes, you know, there's like many roads lead to Rome. You can imbalance your hormones through your nutrition by eating too many carbs that are what I call fast carbs. Those are carbs that are quickly absorbed into your body because they're very processed. So they're more like a flour or a sugar powder. So that's like any flour, bread, pasta, pastries, crackers, cookies, croissants, like all of those foods are like fast carbs, and they go quickly into the body very fast. Like you see a hugely steep rise, and that means your body has to pump out a whole bunch of insulin, and that insulin causes your blood sugar to then tank, because what insulin does, it opens up the doors to the sugar in the cells. The sugar rushes into the cells, and now your blood sugar tanks like too low, and you're on this like roller coaster of high to very low, very high to very low blood sugar. Insulin hormone is going very high, very high, very high, and that triggers cortisol. Cortisol then drains progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen, and you're left with like very imbalanced blood sugars, which was due to the root cause issue of your food. And you could say, well, I eat very healthy. And I would say, well, I thought I was eating really healthy, but here I was eating gluten-free products, which actually gluten-free flour is very bad for blood sugar balance. I was having my morning smoothies with fruits, very bad for blood sugar balance, okay? I was having my whole wheat bread, it's still a flour product, very bad for blood sugar balance, and it just was like all of these sneaky foods, like my protein bar, my healthy protein bar, because I'm getting my protein, very bad for blood sugar balance. So it's all of these like little sneaky things, kombucha. Who would have thought? My kombucha, right? Very bad for blood sugar balance. Yes, it's got the probiotic from the, eating those probiotics, eating the sugars, but it's a sweet taste because there's still a lot of sugar left over. That's why it's sweet, right? The only truly healthy kombucha is one that's not sweet. It's kind of sour. So if you have like a sour kombucha with almost no sweetness in it, that would be okay. I was having coconut water, lots of sugar in it. Sure, if you're in a tropical country and you're running around and it's hot out and you're dehydrated and you have a little bit of coconut water, that's fine. But like, for most of us, we don't have the requirement of having that many sugars in our blood on a constant basis, okay? Fruit juices, very, very bad for blood sugar balance, okay? So, here I was eating what I thought was a very healthy diet, but I was inadvertently, unknowingly spiking my blood sugar too high up and down throughout the day. And that was dysregulating my blood sugars, which was dysregulating my insulin hormone, which was throwing my cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone out of whack. Okay. Another way that I was imbalancing my hormones was through stress. So I'm a medical doctor, and at the time I was working in a very high-paced environment on the spinal cord injury rehabilitation ward in a hospital. I was the specialist on the ward responsible for all of the medical conditions that came up, and I loved it. I just was so thrilling off of it. I really enjoyed it, but the truth is that it was a very highly stressful environment, and I was like a little bit addicted to the stress, to the dopamine rush. It's like boom, boom, team meetings, patients, problem solving, working with the residents, teaching, education. And I had been going at that pace for years, like medical school, residency. I did my master's in research. I was doing research and publishing, attending international conferences. I was doing all the things, but I was burning myself out, but I didn't know it until I actually hit my tipping point where I seriously burned out. And it was just like, game over, shut down. I felt like a failure. I felt like I had somehow like failed because I just could no longer keep up. I just was like, I was unable to maintain the level of intensity. I just felt like I couldn't do the job anymore. I resigned from that particular position, even though I loved to do it. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't cope with it anymore. And I felt like a failure. And in retrospect, I give myself that past self a big hug, because here I was trying to do the best that I could do, but my hormones just couldn't take it anymore. My body had been running on cortisol hormone, had been pumping it out high and high and high so that I could continue to do what I was doing. And at one point it just shut down. And it's not that the adrenal glands, which are what create the cortisol, stop working. It's that the brain literally stops communicating with the adrenal glands because the brain recognizes that it's just making too much cortisol, and that's very bad for your health. Too much cortisol all the time, like most of the time, is really, really bad for your health. That hypercortisol states alone can cause diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's can be result from that, and every single hormonal imbalance can be as a result of that. It causes inflammation, metabolic syndrome, which is hypertension, fat gain around the waist, which is a very classic sign of hypercortisol states. So if you're someone who's like eating well and exercising a lot, you can actually get that belly fat around the waist from having too much cortisol. Why? Because if you over exercise day in and day out and without respecting your energy fluctuations, because it's on your to-do list on your calendar, you can actually also overstimulate cortisol and cause a hypercortisol state. Okay, so that's another way you can imbalance your hormones. And I was doing that too. I would wake up every morning and do my fitness routine and my weightlifting and exercise, and like I was like looking fit and my muscles were good, but I was not healthy. Like that was not my vibrant health, and that's one of the reasons why I was tanking. So I was emotionally stressed out, physically stressed out. My blood sugars were not well controlled, even though I thought I was eating healthy. And it took me understanding this concept of like, I had to replace the fast carbs with the slow carbs, which are like the whole grains which haven't been turned into a flour. So instead of rice flour products, I had the rice, and rinsing it very well until it got clear so that none of that rice flour was left on there. Instead of having my fruit smoothie, I just had the whole fruit. And actually, I switched over from fruits to more vegetables. So eating less fruits and more vegetables. Instead of having like a large plate of like rice and chickpeas with a little bit of vegetables, which is a very like typical vegetarian meal. And I'm not vegetarian, but let's say I thought that would be like a healthy way to eat. Instead, I would have a massive plate of vegetables with a little bit of rice and a little bit of the chickpeas or protein or whatever it is that you're having, so that the vegetables are like 80% of the plate, and then you've got your, your starchy whole grains or your sweet potatoes as a 10%, and then your good quality protein from like happy animals or beans or quinoa, whatever it is that you're having for your protein source, right, as the other 10%. And when I started making those shifts and, preferring water and herbal teas over coconut water and juices and definitely no kombuchas and that kind of stuff, my body started to self-regulate again. It was really quite amazing. Like, and I had to step back from my work. I started meditating. I started doing Qigong. And that really, really got me to like it got me pretty, so here's where I started and here's where I am. Like, my health now has never been better, like never been better. I don't have any more heavy hemorrhagic periods. I got pregnant twice since then. It was amazing. Without in vitro fertilization, my fibroid went away. Like amazing. My skin cleared up, like my mood got better, my energy lifted, like all of those things. And I didn't use one medication. What I did add on to that was I did do some targeted supplementation. Because I think I had just driven myself so deep in the hole of being depleted from like the improper nutrition and the stress, that in order for me to get out of that hole as quickly as I wanted to, and my gut was just like so destroyed from the stress. I had previously in my life had antibiotics and anti-inflammatories for that menstrual pain. I had a lot of ibuprofen, so my gut was a mess. So I had to heal my gut. I had to do an elimination diet in order to figure out what foods were like stressing my body and causing like a low-grade inflammation. I had to do a targeted supplement protocol. And with all of those things, I dug myself out of that hole. And now I'm like standing on the peak of like vibrant health. I can truly say that I'm in the best health. Like, even looking back, I would say I'm in better health than I was in my teens, because my hormonal imbalance started in my teens because I was never really taught how to cope with stress. And I was eating a lot of sugar as a child. Like, my family didn't know about this, right? So we had a lot of like sugary cereals for breakfast, the typical sandwiches with like bread for lunch and then pasta for dinner, crackers and cookies and all those sorts of things. Like, that was just part of the standard American way of being. And it unfortunately, therefore, I know, like, in retrospect, I wasn't in the best of health, even as a younger child. So now I'm in better health than I was as a child, which is like kind of amazing to think about. And I'm so grateful. And I know now, having gotten myself out of this, that I can help other women get out of this. And I do. This is what I do now. So in fact, I left physical medicine rehabilitation, and now I'm doing women's health promotion online through programs, through education, through one-on-one work, mixture of one-on-one and group work, because I've realized that I want to help people either not get sick or get out of that like that decline before they get too deep in the hole, and I can definitely help women get out of that deep hole. It is so much easier to prevent or to reverse it in the earlier stages, because it does require somewhat heroic efforts to get yourself out of that hole. Like, it did take me a couple of years, and doing a lot of that application of the functional medicine principles from my certification, lots of research. So now I have all of these tools in my toolbox, and I know how to deploy them as needed depending on the person and their unique needs. And what I want you to know is that if you are suffering from a hormonal imbalance, or someone that you love is suffering from a hormonal imbalance, like men, it manifests as erectile dysfunction, right? That's a very early sign of hormonal imbalance, okay? Loss of libido is a big one, okay? I just want you to understand that this is reversible. You can completely turn this around, and you don't need medications in order to do so, because medications are not the cure, they're the Band-Aid. Now, you may need a Band-Aid in order to be the bridge to get you to where you want to go, but it should not be the stop sign. You know, the prescription of that medication to make you feel better is not the point at which you stop and say, that's it, I've got my prescription now, right? I'm feeling better. No, because the underlying issue is still going on. It's still going on in your body. And that means that over time, you're going to get sicker and sicker and sicker. And you're going to notice that that Band-Aid is just not enough. You need another Band-Aid, another drug, another Band-Aid, another drug. And then that drug causes its own issues. And then you need a Band-Aid for the Band-Aid, right? So, it's really, in a way, quite simple, okay? You cannot reverse a condition, a disease, under the same conditions that created it. So you often will need someone like an expert in your corner, like myself or somebody else. Like, you just need to find those people that understand this language, that understand this truth, that's supported by cutting edge science, by the way. Nothing that I'm saying here was found outside of medical research. This is all within the realm of research. It's just not what is taught in medical school. Because why? They just don't have the time to learn all of these things, right? And the focus is a lot on learning about these drugs. Whereas my focus now is learning so much about the human frame, about the human body and how it works, that that understanding empowers us to make the changes that are needed to be made in order for the body to get healthy. So if you enjoyed this talk, if you really like this kind of information, then I highly encourage you to join my Facebook group, which is private and free for women, called Wild Wisdom for Women with Dr. Patricia Mills. I show up there every day, and I give tips, pearls of wisdom. I do weekly lives, okay, so that you get to have more and more of that information, because the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, okay? Don't get overwhelmed with this information. Choose one thing from what I just talked about, one thing, and start applying it to your life. And then choose another thing and another thing. Every day, lay a brick on the foundation of your health. And if you do that, you will get healthier. There is no doubt that you will get healthier. And that's what you deserve. You deserve to thrive, not just to survive. We need women in this world who are just feeling their optimal selves so that they can bring their full light into this world. When you are sick, when you have hormonal imbalances, it's like your full light is still there, but it's dimmed. There's like a filter, a dim filter on it. So it can't fully shine through because you're just not feeling good enough for that to happen, right? So I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I don't see any questions that came up from today's talk yet, but I always check the comments afterwards and just tag me if you want me to be very quick at finding them. And I hope that you have a really wonderful rest of your day, evening, or night, depending on when you catch this replay, okay? Thank you, ladies, for those of you who joined me, and I'll catch you soon. Bye.